leader in South Carolina, which really fought hard to be kind of that first in the South primary state, one of the first four. People have been coming down there a lot. How do you feel about what's happening in South Carolina on the ground between these candidates that are all coming in and out of the state? Who's winning down there?
The Democratic National Committee established what it called the pre-primary window, letting Iowa have its caucus, New Hampshire its primary, but then going out to Nevada to do a second caucus where you have a lot of labor workers, a lot of Hispanic voters, and then go to South Carolina. It's a right to work state, but you have a lot of African American voters. That gives us in that window an opportunity for a candidate who may not catch on in Iowa, but can get ignited maybe in South Carolina. May not do so well in New Hampshire, but may do better in Nebraska, not Nebraska, but Nevada.
So you've seen Joe Biden has been the lead in South Carolina almost from the moment he announced it. He's really been, and by head and shoulders in many ways. I mean, I think the last poll I saw, he was at 44%. Bernie Sanders was the second place at 15%. So that's a pretty big jump. What happens if Bernie Sanders wins in Iowa? Do you think that he's the kind of candidate that could do well in South Carolina?
I don't know that he would overtake Joe Biden in South Carolina. There's something to be said for one's life's work. When I talk to people, they miss the fact that a state like Delaware is a small state, but percentage-wise, Delaware is the 9th blackest state in the country. Of the 40, so you got a guy who has worked with African Americans all of his life. He got to be a United States Senator at the age of 29. Before he was old enough to even serve in the Senate, according to the Constitution, he got elected. And he got elected, beaten an incumbent, and he carried a significant African American vote to do so. And he's had that relationship ever since. So there's something to be said for having life relationships. I told someone the other day, I think people miss the fact that on his dying bed, Strom Thurmond requested that Joe Biden do his eulogy. Not long before he died, Fritz Hollins requested that Joe Biden do his eulogy.
You think that's a positive?
I'm sorry?
You think that's a good thing?
From one end of the spectrum to the other, yes. I do think it was a good thing, especially with Fritz Hollins, since I was the other eulogist.
Okay, but Bernie Sanders. You think Bernie Sanders, if he comes there with a head of steam out of Iowa, is he the kind of candidate that people would respond to?
Yeah, there'll be some response, but I still don't think he would overtake Joe.
And then the other person that's out there that I think we have to talk about is Mike Bloomberg.
Yes.
Mike Bloomberg spending a lot of time and money across the South, not in South Carolina so much, although he has been endorsed by our friend Steve Benjamin.
Yeah.
He's spending a lot of time and money across the South. Do you think Mike Bloomberg has a chance at picking up some of these states, maybe not South Carolina because he's not in there, but picking up some of these other southern states that have significant African American population, or is he doing the wrong thing by skipping the first four?
Well, I don't know why he decided to skip the first four. Steyer has been spending a lot of money in South Carolina, and I've seen one poll that shows that he's replaced Bernie Sanders for second place to Joe Biden. Now, that may or may not be true. I do know. I cannot look at my television without seeing, within an hour, 2 or 3 TV ads of Steyer. I cannot go to my mailbox without getting a mailer from Steyer. So he is spending a lot of time in South Carolina. And so I think that if Biden were to stumble coming out of Iowa and New Hampshire, or one or the other, the door will open up for somebody to step in and probably make a run of it. It could be Bernie Sanders, but it could very well be Steyer or Bloomberg.
What do you think happened to Cory Booker and Kamala Harris? Why weren't they more popular in a state like South Carolina?
Well, I think that voters are pretty practical. They are very concerned about the country. They use their heads and their hearts. I think that voters throughout South Carolina, their hearts were with Harris. They were there having to make a choice between Harris and Booker when it comes to African Americans. And Joe Biden was safe harbor for so many of them. And with many of them, they had these long relationships. I don't know why people think that if you've had a 25 or 30-year relationship with somebody, then all of a sudden you show up and says, well, you got to vote for me, and that's just fine. Well, same skin color. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. If I've had this relationship going on with these people for a long, long time, irrespective of the difference in our skin color, those relationships are built on something other than things you have nothing to do with. We do not pick our racial identity. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We do pick our friends.
Someone said to me the other day that when it comes to presidential politics, big politics, African Americans are single issue voters. Civil rights. Are you going to protect us from, you're going to protect African Americans from racism and racial antagonism, or are you going to enable African Americans to help people do well? Is that something that you think rings true?
I don't know if I'll say it like that, because I don't find civil rights to being anything a single issue. I think that when you look at what this country is all about, I've developed a sort of a refrain recently dealing with making this country's greatness accessible and affordable for all. Sort of playing on the Pledge of Allegiance, with liberty and justice for all. No, make this country's greatness accessible and affordable for all. And that's where African Americans are. What is in your program that's going to make health care accessible and affordable, education accessible and affordable, housing accessible and affordable? All of these things carry a civil rights component with them, but they exist irrespective of that. And so I think that African American voters, if you boil it all down, they're looking for this country's greatness to be accessible and affordable.
I got one more question for you before we let you go. I know you got a busy day ahead of you. One of the questions about Bloomberg is that he's rising in the polls so fast across the country, in the big national polls. There's some people who are now wondering whether or not the DNC should change its rules, because he's not raising money. Should the DNC change its rules to get Bloomberg on the stage with the other major candidates instead of letting him kind of be able to run this campaign without being in any debates? Do you think that the DNC should change its rules to get Bloomberg on the stage with Biden and Bernie and Warren and the other gang?
Absolutely not. I don't think so. I have nothing against Bloomberg. I like Bloomberg. He and I have interacted on HBCU campuses. He's been to South Carolina. In fact, at my memory service, he had a breakfast for me some time ago. We have had a relationship a long time. I've been up in New York visiting him years ago, so there's nothing new with this relationship. But I do not feel that we ought to be messing around with the rules. You lay out the rules are there for everybody. They were there for him from the get-go. If he decided not to get in, I don't think that we ought to be changing rules to fit his decision-making process. I think that we all made our decisions about what we ought to do based on what the rules were up front, and that's the way they ought to stay.
All right, Jim Clyburn, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching Hill TV on YouTube. Be sure to click subscribe and hit the bell so you know when we post new videos, and head to thehill.com for all the latest political news.